My name's Blake Morgan, and I'm a musician. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I'm also a music company owner here in New York City. I've been performing since I was 5. I was the kid who had saved up his money in his summer job to buy a synthesizer. Because of that, I started getting gigs when I was really little, playing keyboards in bands of the high school guys. When I was 13 years old, I had my first real gig with this band of 16-year-olds, and it was at CBGB's. I was really little for my age. So when I was 13, I sort of looked like I was 8. The club wouldn't let me in because I looked like this tiny little kid playing at CBGB's. We snuck me into the club inside the bass drum case. I climbed into the bass drum case, and they carried me in and sound checked and set up, and then just before the show started, I jumped up and I started playing. So that was my first rock and roll gig. It was at CBGB's. As people do at college, I put a band together and we started playing together, and we did that for a while. What ended up happening is I just sort of carried on that kind of naturally from there, out of that band into my own stuff, because I was writing a lot of the songs for the band. And I made this EP in 1996 of these 6 songs, not even looking for a record deal. I'd sort of almost even stopped looking, and I was just making this really for myself. It got the attention of Phil Ramone, and I got this enormous record deal with Phil and a label that he put together through Sony. And what ended up happening with that record deal is that the record came out and we got wonderful critical acclaim and commercial success, and I was touring. But I could tell early on that the label didn't have its act together. Just a couple weeks after my first record came out, I sat in a marketing meeting, and the marketing meeting started with the head of marketing and various other people in the department. And one of the lower down people said, okay, well, we have good news to start the meeting. Blake has debuted at number 8 on the Billboard Heat Seeker chart. So everyone was very excited. I was very excited. And the head of marketing, completely seriously, said, oh my God, this is great news. Do we have any idea how many people are ahead of him? So there was dead silence in the room, and nobody knew what to say. So I said, well, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that if I'm number 8, there are 7 people ahead of me. So that's when things, to me, began to become clear that, okay, I think I'm working with people who aren't necessarily the brightest bulbs in the tanning bed. So that, and then many other stories, led me to realize that this was not going to work for me. And the label ended up going bad, and in the end, I had to challenge the label, and in fact, I fought to get out of my long-term deal. But it wasn't because of Phil, and I think Phil was as heartbroken about what happened with that label as the artists were. It's a very painful thing to really make stuff that you care about, and then watch it get ruined. Phil let me out, which was great. He wrote me a beautiful letter. I never wanted to own a label. I never wanted to own a music company. And most of the things that I do in music, outside of writing songs and singing, are things I never thought I would ever do. But like so many things, you start doing them out of necessity. So a couple weeks after this, I was actually walking down the street with my mother, and I said, I swear to you, if I had any guts, I would just start my own label. I would go to all the people I work with, all these other bands, like local bands. I would just go to every one of them and I would say, these aren't demos, these are records, and we're going to put them out. And if we sell 100 copies, we'll sell 100 copies. That's where we'll start. And she said, well, that's what you should do. And I was like, yeah, I know. Oh, no. Oh, that is what I should do. Artists need to have a say in what's happening with their music. What we do at ECR is truly unique. All of the artists and all of the labels own their master recordings 100%. We have artists that are signed directly to ECR, and then we have a bunch of labels that are also signed to ECR that are different genres of music. We have a world music label and a rockabilly label and so forth and so on. But there's one elemental principle for all of the artists and all of the labels. Every single artist owns their own music 100%. The label actually owns nothing. It's simply borrowing it for distribution. It's utterly unique in the music world because it's empowering artists who then have a stake in their own future. And the reason that this is so important to me is because of what I went through at that label and why I had to fight to get out of it. I'm an artist on this label too. I'm not going to screw myself, so I'm not going to screw them either. The record that's coming out next week is my 4th record. One of the things I really wanted to do with this new record is I didn't want to start recording anything until everything was written. So I wrote everything first. It was kind of unique for me because in my previous records, they all came together a little bit in the studio, and this was different. The sequence of the songs, it's almost exactly the sequence that I wrote them in. Each of my records beforehand had very new songs and also songs that I'd had around for a while. This record is really a snapshot about one period of my life. What's happening in music, and the big fundamental change right now, is actually something, for the first time in a while, that's really good. And what's happening is we're moving from an ownership culture to a streaming culture in music. And there are many kinks and many problems, but it is solving one problem that we've had for the last 10 years, which has decimated music, which is stealing. You used to have a record collection, and I would have a record collection, and maybe we'd share it, or maybe we'd go over and we'd listen to music together. Well, we have the same record collection because it's on Spotify. We each have the same 20 million albums. And the question is, how do you monetize this fairly? And how do you move forward in a music culture where artists can get paid and labels can get paid and revenue is fair? Because over the last 10 years, I think there's really been this divide. The audience has been sharing music and stealing music, and it's put artists and the audience very much at each other's throats. I think part of the argument that artists and musicians have had that's failed is saying, hey, you're taking our money. And I don't think that the audience, up until recently, has had a lot of sympathy for that, because they've said to themselves, well, what do I care if Beyonce is making a little less money? But the reality is, like any profession, and this is my profession, there are people at the very, very top who are making a lot of money, and then there's a huge middle class. And I'm a middle class recording artist. And there are a lot of middle class recording artists who make $20, $30, $40, $50, $60,000 a year with their music. And it's those people who've really suffered during this 10 years. In the third quarter of last year, I had my songs played on Pandora around 28,000 times. This generated $1.62 of revenue for me. I got paid $1.62 through my BMI statement. And for that same period, I got another $3 through Sound Exchange, which is for the performer royalty. There's a songwriter royalty and a performer royalty. So $4 and change for 28,000 plays, and Pandora wants this grossly, grossly reduced. They sent me a letter, and the letter was so offensive because it was misdirection. So this letter that they sent was asking us to sign a petition that would reduce our own royalties. It was like, hey, we've got this really exciting thing. If you could join this petition and help us lobby Congress, it's really going to be great for you. So I responded to this email in a sort of friendly but blunt way to the founder of Pandora, who had written me as well as a lot of other artists. He used this phrase, which he said, we're seeking to allow musicians to participate in the business. It compelled me to respond. Musicians shouldn't be allowed to participate in the business. We are the business. The only product that Pandora has is our music. What they're saying is, the only way our business is sustainable is if we don't have to pay for music. Imagine a pizzeria saying, the only way that we can stay open is if we don't have to pay for dough. I like Pandora. I didn't come out against Pandora. I came out against lying. Part of Pandora's argument is that they're a new company and they need a break right now to get off the ground. And if they can get off the ground, then it'll be so great for musicians everywhere. But it's been widely reported that the founder of Pandora cashes in $1 million of stock in his own company on the first of every month over a 14-month period, the same 14-month period that I made $15. This is our music. And we should be working in partnership with Pandora or anybody else who's distributing our music, the same way that our label works in partnership with our own artists. If you're an artist and you want music to be your life, the world is going to tell you not to be an artist. The world is going to tell you you're wrong and you're crazy and you better have something to fall back on. I'm here to tell you, at least just for 3 minutes, that I hope you do. And I hope you do it. And I hope you don't have anything to fall back on. This is a profession, like any other profession, and it's magical and it's special. That's what I would say to any entrepreneur or any artist or any musician. You're not crazy. You should do it, and I hope you do. The world is a better place if you do it. I can hear you going on about what went wrong. You better stay away. I can hear you say. My definition of success: I was a 5-year-old kid and I wanted to be a musician for the rest of my life. And I didn't want to wait a table, and I didn't want to work in a store. I used to do that kind of stuff. I don't now. And I get to write songs, and I get to work with artists I believe in, and I get to build something that matters to us together. I do know that the 5-year-old kid who's inside of me would look at this moment with a new record coming out on this company after what I've gone through, And he would say, I like that guy. I can hear you say how you're really lucky.